Hi everyone, this is audap. Let's continue our game of Chaos Head Noah running on Nintendo Switch. It felt like a long time since I'd been back to the base. In fact though, I'd only been gone about 12 hours. The PC was still on and my Sedaton screensaver was smiling into the dark room. I made sure to carefully lock the door from the inside and then threw myself on the sofa. When I closed my eyes, all the things that happened to me today came flooding back. I couldn't believe the cops thought I was the killer. They were totally wrong. There was no way I could kill anybody, right? Do your jobs, damn it. This isn't a game. I bet they were just coming after me because I was a creepy otaku. Otaku had low social status. Nobody would complain if one was made out to be a killer. They weren't making any progress finding the real killer, so they wanted to make it out to be a scapegoat. Damn it. How was I supposed to clear my name? The events at Cafe came back to me and I shivered. There was somebody even scarier than the police out there. Yua was my enemy. I had let my guard down because I hadn't seen her for a while. I thought she was just going to leave me alone. But today I realized my mistake. I needed the D-sword to fight these people. I looked over at the cheap sword next to my computer. It was a fake. According to Ayase, only those with power could see a real one. But Nanami had been able to see mine on the day I bought it. And unlike Ayase and Senna, my sword didn't glow. Where was the real sword? I needed it as soon as I could get it. Otherwise, I was doomed. I was so sick of all this awful stuff that kept happening to me.
あなたは DID 多重人格なんです。
No, that's not true. It's impossible. They say multiple personality disorder is really rare in Japan, don't they? You just saw too many movies and read too many novels. I didn't have multiple personalities. There was no evidence anywhere.
違う。あれは違う。
But it would explain that chat log.
あんなの捏造だ。証拠にはならない。
But there's no evidence that I don't have multiple personalities either.
先生は僕を多重人格だなんて診断しなかった。
But then Dr. Takshina vanished right after that for no good reason.
僕が一番よく知ってる。
But I wasn't sure who I was. Suddenly I felt the prickling on the back of my neck. The same as always, someone's gaze watching me. Whose eyes are those?
そうだ。将軍だ。あいつが犯人だ。チャットログにもそう書いてあったじゃないか。ユアは将軍の手下だし。ニュージェネ事件だって全部将軍が。
But did Shogun even really exist? How did I know that he wasn't just a delusion?
僕はまともだ。まともなんだ。そうでしょ。
I held my head in my hands and screamed out to an empty room. An answer came from
メールだよボケナス
Zeta? I slowly walked over to my PC and opened the email. It was from Grim. The subject was, found something cool. It was probably more Gouda or some mental browser crash image. I didn't have time to deal with his trolling, but I decided I'd at least read it. Nightheart, how come you're not in chat? You're not playing ESO either. I couldn't find you, so I had to send you an email, lol. The video's totally nuts. You gotta see it. I know you probably think I'm just trolling you, but it's got the NewGen killer in it. Everybody online is talking about it, so you gotta watch it or you'll be left out, lol. A video of a NewGen murder taken by the killer? My fingers were shaking on the top of the mouse. I couldn't take my eyes off the text. Did it show who the killer was? Who was it? Was it me? Part of me wanted to see it, and part of me firmly resisted. This would be proof. Proof I wasn't the killer. Maybe proof that I was. I don't know which would it be. It was like gambling in a way. I felt my heart begin to race as I moved my mouse cursor over the link, but I couldn't work up the courage to click on it.
私あなたを助けたい。
Shut up. Don't treat me like I'm the killer. Don't try to have sympathy for me. I didn't do it. You're the one that's working for the killer. Anger boiling within me, I clicked on the link. It opened a Mewtwo page. The video's window read loading.
僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない。
The video only took 10 seconds to load, but to me those 10 seconds felt like an eternity. Eventually the loading ended and the video began to play. It was showing someplace very dark. The background was totally black, like it was indoors somewhere maybe. I brought my face close up to the monitor to see if I could make out any details. It was dark and hard to tell, but there seemed to be several boys and girls there. They were all talking really loudly. Maybe it was the low audio bitrate of the video, or maybe it was that they were all so excited, but I couldn't make out what they were saying at all. Sometimes they would scream violently and the static from the low quality mic would be awful. After watching a while, I could tell that there were 5 people there, 6 if you included the cameraman. The cameraman was carefully staying out of the frame. It was hard to make out the faces of the others in the darkness, too. They seemed to be cheering each other, rubbing each other's foreheads, and giving out friendly pats on the back and hugs. The girls seemed to be crying with joy and loud voices, too. It was a strange scene, sure, but what did it have to do with NewGen? Was it really the NewGen killer who was filming this? If nothing else, I didn't remember doing it. After a short while, the person holding the camera slowly began to move forward. The 5 people in the shot, originally about 5 meters away, began to loom larger in the frame. The video's resolution was very low. Maybe they dropped the bitrate down as low as it could go during encoding to keep the file size as low as possible. Cameras these days all had night mode on them. Why wasn't the cameraman using it? Maybe it was an old camera? Suddenly the camera panned from left to right, showing the surrounding area. What I thought was a black background was actually the night sky. This video was being filmed outside. The reason I hadn't seen any buildings was because they were on top of a skyscraper. The 5 boys and girls were standing right on the edge of a tall skyscraper. Behind them was a sheer drop. You could see the lights of Shibuya spreading out from below. Finally, I understood. I knew what this footage meant. I knew why Grimm said the NewGen killer had to have taken it. The case where 5 boys and girls had jumped off the locked roof of the Cornelius Tower. The one NewGen case where they weren't sure if it was a suicide or a murder. If this video showed the 5 who died in the jump, then what would mean a 6th person? Then that would mean the 6th person was there when it happened. I've been wrong about what they were doing. They were all crouching on the ground, clinging together and crying. They all seemed to know they were about to die and they couldn't accept it. One was shaking their head no over and over. One was on their knees, sobbing and ripping at their hair. One was screaming at the cameraman, demanding to know why they were doing this. One had already gone crazy and was crying while they laughed. What I saw was a violent desire for life and a powerful wish to not die, and helpless fury at the unfair situation they were in. But what was strange was the cameraman's voice wasn't in the video at all. The person recording the video was almost eerily calm.
Yamero. Yamero!
The video was close to a month old. Nothing I saw now would change it. I knew it was meaningless, but I still couldn't help but scream at the monitor.
こいつらみんな死にたくなんかないんだぞ。
But of course my words were unheard, and the person holding the camera kept walking towards the 5 of them. They began to crawl away from the camera in fear. But it didn't matter. The edge of the heliport was right behind them. There wasn't any kind of safety fence. There was nowhere to run for the 5 of them. Another step back and they'd fall. The camera slowly began going forward, as if taunting them, oblivious to their cries. But even as it got close, whoever was holding it did nothing but move forward. Then suddenly all 5 fell silent. They didn't make any motion towards each other, and nothing happened to cause it, but they all fell silent at the exact same moment. They stood up. The wind on top of Cornelius' tower was strong. It threatened to knock them over. If they slipped, they'd fall. And then they all took each other's hands as if in resignation. Their hands clasped tightly with one another's.
よせ。やめろ。謝るな。
Silence. Even the sound of the wind blowing felt like it had stopped. The only thing I could hear was the sound of the cars traveling on the highway below the skyscraper. The cameraman still didn't do a thing. And then, one of the 5, ever so softly, whispered,
その目誰の目?
I froze in front of the monitor as if a cold hand had reached into my chest and grabbed my heart.
なんでまたその言葉なんだよ。
This is the first NewGen case, right? Why had this boy suddenly said, "Whose eyes are those?" That was the dying message in the 4th case, the vampire incident. This made no sense. The video continued, oblivious to my screams. The 5 of them slowly stepped off the edge as if there was a path waiting for them there, and then they fell off into the darkness of the city sky. I bit my lip and covered my eyes. Group dive wasn't a suicide. This was murder. The killer was right there when it happened. And who was the cameraman? I knew the answer. Muffled by the strong wind on the roof, hidden by the sounds of the screaming and crying, and between the bursts of car horns from the highway below, there was another sound that I could just barely hear. It was the sound of creaking metal. A sound that I only heard when the cameraman moved forward. The sound of a wheelchair.
あの時、僕の前に現れたのは現実だったんだね。カメラの目線が低すぎだよ、将軍。
Chapter 5, Delusions. The news about the leaked video of the group dive quickly became a huge deal, of course. The net was, like Grim said, in an uproar. A lot of people on 8chan were saying that this proved that all the 4 NewGen murders were committed by the same person. Killer has got to be Whose Eyes Are Those? The guy who upped the video to YouTube has to be the killer, right? Those totally Whose Eyes Are. Okay, I call the cops Whose Eyes Are Those were as blah blah blah. The Whose Eyes message showed up at the vampire crime scene too. Now this connection between the first and last NewGen murders, people had been saying there was no connection at all, but I guess they were wrong. So then the pregnant man and crucified her also. Oh shit, this is exciting. Whose eyes were those? And since the vampire case was the first time we saw Whose Eyes, that means the killer can't be somebody who saw the group dive and tried to copy it. They have to be the same guy. Don't look at me, lol. Whose eyes are those? I saw the video and it looks like fake bullshit to me. I saw the video. I bet one Perica it's some theater group trying to make a name for themselves. Don't say whose eyes, guys. You're just egging on the killer on. So this means all the NewGen murders were the same guy, right? Whose eyes are those? Maybe the other side of that ledge only drops down 2 meters and there's like a mat or something under it, lol. Agreed, as long as that catchphrase is popular, we're going to keep seeing more murders. Cut it the hell out, it's not funny anymore. Whose eyes? I live in Shibuya. Saw don't look at me. It's the most viewed YouTube video. Hey lol, don't look at me. It's the top article in MHK News. Those eyes claim responsibility yet? The TV News was just as excited. 140 was right. All the non-government run TV stations except for TV TK had done specials on it, and they've been showing the video non-stop. None of the specials were longer than an hour, but the fact that the video was broadcast all over the country was shocking. Of course, all the stations cut the last part where they actually jumped, but the effect they had was incredible. The TV commentators were saying more or less the same thing as the internet, that all 4 of the NewGen cases were the work of the same killer. It was inevitable that they'd say that. At last, the NewGen cases had something in common. Whose eyes are those? The phrase that was so popular in Shibuya right now. It had originally been thought that these words only appeared during the 4th incident, the vampire case. But one of the victims of the group dive said the phrase as well, despite it taking place over a month before vampire. Now, out of the 4 murders, it had appeared in 2, the first and the most recent one, which meant it was probably the same person responsible for all 4. The police had an emergency press conference and announced that they were doing everything they could to find the uploader of the video. A few politicians issued statements expressing their anger and sorrow and demanding that the killer be caught immediately. The video was deleted by YouTube's administrators less than 3 hours after upload, but it was too late. Channels everywhere had downloaded it already, and nobody could stop it from being spread now. And then, late that night, the police made their next announcement. The video of the group dive incident was uploaded from a manga cafe named At Cafe, specifically the PC in room 37. My room. I sat in my seat and leaned forward, my head pressed against my arms. I'd been listening in on the conversations around me without even realizing I was doing so. Today I was feeling really sensitive towards other people's voices. After listening to a few conversations, I realized that everybody was talking about the group dive, just like I thought they would be. Some of the girls were even saying, "Whose eyes were those?" as a joke. I bit my lip and stared down at my desk. That video was proof. Proof that Shogun was real. Proof that I wasn't the killer. So, I didn't have multiple personalities. The old man in the wheelchair was the NewGen killer. But why had Shogun uploaded the video? Nobody had any clues to the identity of the killer. Why would he reveal himself now? I thought about it and had come to 2 possible conclusions. The first was that Shogun may have just wanted attention and recognition for his crimes. Given how he'd shown himself to me, that seemed likely. The other was as a challenge to me. For some reason, Shogun and his servant Yua were after me. I didn't know why, but it almost succeeded in making me out to be the NewGen killer. The police might still suspect me. Shogun was trying to trap me even now.
僕のメッセージは受け取ってくれた？目覚めるんだ。早く。でないと、もっとたくさんの人が死んじゃうことになるから。忘れないで。君は逃げちゃいけない。
That's what the Shogun I'd seen had said. As near as I could tell, what he meant to say was, "I'm going to kill you, so don't run away." It was a threat. And now he's uploaded a video for all of Japan to see. He was escalating things. He must have moved to the next stage of his plan. But it would be naive to think this meant he'd given up on me. I should assume that his attacks and plots were only going to get worse. I was scared. The video was terrifying. Shogun was weaker and frailer than even I was, but he'd killed 5 teenagers even without laying a finger on them. If he was behind all the NewGen killings, that would mean that even the pregnant man, crucified, and vampire were all done by his hand, despite his tiny, frail body. Or maybe Yua had helped? Either way, I didn't have any hope of protecting myself from people who could do something like that. I felt anger at being chosen as their target so arbitrarily, but I also felt afraid of them. And then, whose eyes are those? There was that message too. Whenever I let my guard down for a moment, my body started to shiver. I had to stay tense at all times if I was going to keep myself from losing control. I kept a close eye on my surroundings and made sure I was ready to run if somebody approached. Shogun, or maybe Yua, could appear at any moment. It was entirely possible that Shogun had more servants than just Yua, after all. Maybe some of my classmates, the kids who were laughing and chatting around me right now, were under his influence too. I had to avoid being caught off guard like I was at At Cafe yesterday, otherwise this time I'd be killed. I needed to find that D-sword. If I wanted to get out of this alive, I needed that D-sword. After talking to Ayase and Senna and looking on the internet, I was getting more and more sure of it. If I could get the D-sword, I'd be saved. While I was watching things unfold on the internet last night, I'd also been doing everything I could to find information on the D-sword. I'd gotten nowhere. I moved my hands up to my head and tore at my greasy hair. How the hell was I supposed to get a D-sword?
見つけなくちゃいけない。自分自身で。方法なんて私には分からないの。
That's what Ayase had said, but I didn't even have a hint as to where to start. It wasn't fair. I was getting more and more scared, and I wasn't making any progress. The fear was crushing me. I had to find it. I had to find the D-sword fast. I needed the D-sword no matter what. I gotta find it. Gotta find it or it's over. I have to find it before I become the victim in the next NewGen case. But find it how? I don't even know where to start. There has to be a hint. Some kind of hint. If I don't hurry, I'll lose my chance. Can I find it? I didn't have time to be here at school. My life and graduating school, there was no question which one was more important. So why was I... Then I heard somebody getting close to my seat. I tensed up, jerking my head upwards.
びっくりした。
It was Rimi. She was standing there, blinking in surprise at my sudden movement. You're the one that surprised me. Don't scare me like that. I relaxed, sighed, and dropped my head back on my desk.
タク、大丈夫？
She peered over me like she always did. I quickly looked away.
顔、真っ青だよ。汗もすごいし、目も血走っちゃってる。
Was Rimi on my side, or was she my enemy? After she'd saved me once, I was a lot less cautious around her. But that meant I was also just ignoring all the things that made me suspect her in the first place. Why did I see her covered in blood during the crucified murder? If she and I were friends since my first year of school, why didn't I remember it?
タク、体調悪いの？
Rimi looked a little concerned.
なんでもない。
I turned my head away from her. There was no way I could ask her any of these questions to her face. When the day's classes finally ended, I was mentally exhausted. Even during class, I'd been ignoring the lecture and constantly keeping an eye on my surroundings. I hadn't slept since yesterday, but I felt so tense that I was actually more alert than usual. The school day seemed to drag for an eternity, and the longer it went, the more miserable I felt. Why did time seem to pass so much slower or faster depending on your mental state? They say time flows at the same rate for everybody, but there's no way that's true. Time is subjective. If you ask me, the things like hours and minutes were just somebody's secret conspiracy to hide that subjectivity, to make everyone think it was the same. And if time's flow was subjective, didn't that imply you could control it too? I only thought of that because of what Senna said about controlling other people's will. Didn't that imply...
生まれながらに目が不自由な人でも目の前にある景色がちゃんと見えるようになる。ビデオカメラのような映像機器を介してな。
If you could take the image recorded by a video camera, turn it into electrical pulses, and send it into the brain in a way that could be understood, didn't that imply that you could also take the image in the mind and turn them into electrical signals too, then send them to some kind of device to be turned into video? There was no need for the signals to be coming from a video camera anyway. For example, what if you hooked up a hard drive with a recording of a travel program? Or what if it wasn't a travel program but an anime? An anime is just a delusion. It's 2D. But somebody born blind would never even have seen 3D images. If you told them this was what the world looked like, would they believe the 2D world was real? Wouldn't that mean from their perspective that a delusion was real? For example, let's say that somebody we'll call A has an image in their brain. You could send it to a hard drive and then turn it into a video, and then broadcast it into B's brain. Then A's delusion will become B's reality. Their delusions would become real. It would be theoretically possible, right? Wow, lol, I'm a genius, lol. I became incredibly excited at my own idea. Maybe this was the key to getting a D-sword. Ayase had said a D-sword was a delusion after all. Okay, time to head home and look it up online. After that, I leapt up, bag in hand, and ready to go. But that girl was standing at the door, looking at me. I screamed. Half of my classmates were still in the room. I could feel them staring at me coldly. Stop! Run away! Don't look at me! Run away! Please don't look at me! Run! Panicking, I knocked aside my classmates and headed out the other door, the one opposite from where Yuo was standing. I ran until I made it to the courtyard, where I was suddenly overtaken by the urge to vomit. I tried to hold it in, but it was useless. I dropped to my knees and threw up. My stomach acid stung my throat. My eyes were blurry. It hurt to breathe. There was a disgusting taste left in my mouth from the vomit. I guess I was under a lot more stress than I thought I was. Maybe it was because I had been up all night. I wiped the edges of my mouth and I looked around frantically. Nobody was there. But the blind spots and shadows that I normally ignored now seemed terrifying to me. I started to think that Yua and Shogun could be lurking anywhere. And once the idea was in my head, I couldn't take another step. Somebody, help me. I wanted to cry, and the urge to vomit came back too. This time I didn't throw up, but I coughed and gasped for air. It hurt so much that even more tears came. Then I felt a soft hand rubbing my back. I turned around, afraid.
大丈夫。
Rimi was there.
大丈夫だよ。
She wasn't asking me. She was gently telling me.
私はタクの味方だから。
She showed no sign of disgust at the smell of my vomit, or the way my face was covered in snot and tears, with dried remains of my stomach contents crusting the corners of my mouth. She had a gentle smile on her face, as if she was trying to make me feel better. She came up to me and rubbed my back gently. Why? When I'd wanted somebody to save me before, she'd appeared then too, like a superhero coming to save the day. Why was it that having her around made me feel so much safer? Why did I feel so much better? The next thing I knew, I was spilling my guts out to her, even though I hated talking about myself.
助けて。一人は怖いんだ。
Maybe that's why I'd come to school today. Until now, I'd always thought I was better off alone. Of course, I was still afraid of talking to anybody. I didn't think I had any hope of being friends with them. But after everything I was going through with Yua and Shogun, I felt so scared and lonely. I wanted somebody to be by my side. I didn't even need them to be nice to me. I just needed them to be there.
一人は怖い。
だったら私が一緒にいてあげる。
In her words, there was no malice, no hesitation.
さすがに24時間ずっとは無理だけど。
She smiled, and suddenly I looked up at the sky. What was she looking at? It felt like she was staring at something far off in the distance.
朝一緒に学校行って。 学校では休み時間にどうでもいいこと話して、お昼休みは一緒にご飯食べて、夕方一緒に帰って、帰るついでにたまにどこかのお店に寄ったりして、タクの部屋でちょっとだけおしゃべりして、それでまた明日ねって手を振って別れて、そんなのでいいなら私いくらでもしてあげるよ。そういうの結構憧れなんだ。
But that almost sounds like you'd be my girlfriend. I was in shock. She was serious, at least as near as I could tell from looking at her.
どうしてどうしてそこまでしてくれるの？
それは
Because? This was leading where I thought it was, right? Her next words might be, because I like you, right? I couldn't understand what about me she could possibly like, though. Oh, wait. This was a Kumi's trap, a clever trick to get me to let my guard down. It happened before, right? You had deceived me and then betrayed me. I couldn't get my hopes up. I needed to imagine the worst-case scenario. Mimi might be my enemy, too.
石
She suddenly saluted me. I was caught off guard by her sudden action and worried that she might suddenly be about to reveal her horrible true nature. But I could still see the gentle smile on her face.
そんなの友達だからに決まってるでしょ。私にしてみればタクを助けてあげるのは当然なの。どうしてとか寂しいこと言わない。わかった？
うん。
Friends, huh? If she'd said, because you're my boyfriend, it might have felt like a whole new life for me was about to begin. But even if it was just as friends, it made me so incredibly happy. Having someone else to be nice to me. Having someone to do something for me without expecting a reward. I didn't realize how happy that would make me. Maybe it was something I'd never experienced before. More than that, it made me feel like I wasn't alone. Mimi was my salvation. The urge to throw up finally subsided and I felt a lot better.
はい、使う？
She offered me a red handkerchief that smelled like flowers. I took it, but I was hesitant to use it.
汚しちゃっていいよ。タクにあげる。
ありがとう。
I felt guilty, but at this point I decided just to take advantage of anything she'd offer me. I wiped away the barf on the edges of my mouth. This was the first time a girl who wasn't in my family had given me a present. I wasn't sure if you could call it a present, though. But for somebody who was totally alone, like me, even something small like this was an incredible treasure. The joy and sense of relief made me feel like I was going to cry again.
それじゃあ帰ろっか。
She smiled innocently.
一緒に。
What she just said about staying with me seemed, in her mind, to be a settled matter. I hadn't given an answer, but she didn't care. But of course I didn't plan on saying no. I was afraid of being alone. I didn't want to be alone. Right now, Rimi was all I could rely on. But that didn't mean that everything would be fine from now on. I still chose a different route home than usual, and I kept looking over my shoulder the whole way. Danger seemed to lurk in every shadow. Each time I came to an intersection, I had delusions of Yua and the Shogun lurking around the corner and froze up, unable to go forward. Then Rimi would go ahead of me, looking down at the street and turning back to give me a nod.
大丈夫。誰もいないよ。
I gave a sigh of relief and followed her. Rimi stayed with me, not seeming annoyed at all.
ねえ、聞いていいかな。一体何があったの？
I wasn't sure whether I could tell Rimi. If I told her and Shogun came after her too, that would be my fault.
話したくないなら無理に話さなくても。
いや、話すよ。
I started to speak. I was reluctant to get her involved, sure, but if I didn't explain what was going on, she wouldn't understand how desperate my situation was. I decided to ignore the risk to her for the sake of helping myself. She was the one who told me she'd stay by my side, so it was okay, right? I told her about Shogun, the one behind the NewGen murders, and about his servant, Yua. that the two of them were after me. What had happened in front of the 107. I kept tripping over my tongue, but I managed to get it all out. When I told her about Shogun, the man in the wheelchair, she'd frowned a little. That was the thing I wanted to ask her about most. Now was the perfect chance to do it too.
いたかな、車椅子のおじいさんなんて。
She didn't sound very confident.
思い出して。大切なことだ。
でも、
She paused as if she was about to say something that was hard to say.
そもそもあの時渋谷の駅前が無人だったなんてことなかったよ。いつもと同じだった。
So she hadn't seen anything strange at all that night. I'd hoped she'd tell me that she'd seen the same things I had. Remy and I had seen different things. Which of us had seen what really happened? Was I just wrong? Was that empty Shibuya just a delusion of mine? But there was a problem then. That old man in the wheelchair in the empty Shibuya, Shogun. How could you explain him? If the empty Shibuya was just a delusion, then Shogun might be a delusion too.
駅前って人が多いでしょ。だから車椅子の人がいてもなかなか気がつかないだろうし。要するに見てないってこと。ごめんね、役に立てなくて。
Shogun wasn't a delusion of mine. I was sure of that. I thought he might be at first, but my opinion had changed totally after I'd seen the video of the group dive. The Shogun who'd taken that video was real. That was proof he existed. But the empty Shibuya could have been a delusion, maybe. Shibuya had been filled with people then. It had just looked empty to me, that was all. But what did that mean?
ねえ、それよりお願いがあるんだけど、いい？
She put her hands together as if pleading with me.
CD を買いに行きたいんだ。せっかくここまで来てからちょっと寄っていきたいんだけど、いいかな？
To be honest, I want to get back to the base as soon as possible. I'd only taken this longer route home because I thought Shogun and Yua might be trying to set an ambush for me. I didn't want to go shopping. But if I refused here, I might upset Remy. She might even get mad and leave me here. That would be bad. I needed her to stay with me. I didn't even think I could get back to the base on my own. In the end, I wasn't able to refuse. I followed behind her, fear increasing with each step I took. Hopefully, even you would be reluctant to attack me with as many people around. But I was more scared of the idea that Shogun and Yua could be lurking in the crowds than relieved by the thought of getting lost in them. Each time somebody came close to me, I felt myself screaming internally.
パトカーだ。
My body froze. I quickly hid behind Remy. She was right. There were 2 police cars stopped in the street. 3 uniformed police officers were standing next to them. The police were after me too. I hadn't actually done anything, but they were too stupid to understand that. They were looking for me. Were they looking for me, I wondered? But after that, I realized they weren't. They were staring at a crowd that was marching down the street. A protest, maybe? They were all carrying signs and waving flags, and they even had sashes and headbands. There was a little girl in the rows of protesters looking confused as she was pulled along by her parents. On her shirt, the words, "Whose eyes are those?" were written with a black magic marker. I bit my lip when I saw it.
何のデモだろうね。
The crowd was full of men and women, and the people were of all ages. As they marched, they'd sometimes yell out slogans. "Drive the demons out of Shibuya."
悪魔？
Some of the signs said things like, "Drive the demons out of Shibuya," or "Protect Shibuya from terrorists." It was probably a protest over the NewGen murders. Protesting wasn't going to accomplish anything. If they had time to protest, they should just find and kill Shogun instead. Then I wouldn't have to feel so scared all the time.
タク、行こう。
Mimi looked away from the protesters, seemingly disinterested, and began to walk towards the CD shop. Once inside, she headed straight for the indie CD corner. Unlike the J-pop section, there weren't many people there. She stopped in front of the P shelf and began looking for a CD, but she quickly gave up.
やっぱりないな。
An indie band whose name started with a P? Could it be...
タクはファンタズムってバンドを知ってる？今話題になってるけど。
I should have guessed I should have guessed that was what she was after. Of course I knew about them. I'd gone to a concert and even owned a CD. I nodded and she chuckled.
私、そういう情報は結構疎くて、最近になって知ったんだ。それで、友達に借りようかと思ったんだけど、なかなか手に入らないらしくて、誰も持ってないんだよ。だから、CD 買うしかないかなって思って、ここ1週間ぐらいあちこち探してみたんだけど、どこも売り切れ中。次はいつ入るんだろう。
僕持ってる。
Rimi's eyes went wide.
持ってるって CD?
I nodded, and then Rimi... put her hands on my shoulders. Her face was so close, I almost flinched. The smell of her shampoo tickled my nostrils, and I could feel my face turning red.
ねえタク、取引しよう。
Trade?
その CD 貸してくれたら、見返りに私。
Her face was dead serious. I gulped. All what?
と
She seemed to be lost in thought. Did she not actually have any ideas?
見返りなんていらない。
それって貸してくれないっていうこと？
Mimi looked sad.
そっか、残念。
いや違うよ。見返りなんて必要ないってこと。普通に貸すよ。
タク、ありがとう。
She gave me a brilliant smile. She looked so happy. I thought she might jump on me and give me a big hug right there. Normally girls were never happy about anything I did, so it made me happy too. I was glad I worked up the courage to say what she could borrow it.
利子。じゃあ見返りなしで借ります。となれば善は急げ。タクの家にレッツゴー。
I managed to get back to the base safely. Of course, it was thanks to Rimi, who I was grateful to her. I wish she hadn't refused me when I asked for a little time to clean up my room before she came in, though.
だって前に来た時に汚いっていうのはよーくわかったし、今さら片付けたって無駄だよ。かっこつけなくてもいいって、私とタクの中でしょ？ね？
Were we too close for that? My memories of Rimi were completely gone, so I didn't really know. Sometimes I was surprised at how overly friendly Rimi seemed. It didn't really bother me, but it was clear that there was a difference in how we felt about personal space. Was she really serious when she said she didn't care if I cleaned up my room? There were discarded food containers from the convenience store on the floor, and stacks of H-game boxes with XXX rated covers on the bed. Either Rimi was really brave, or she didn't see me as any kind of potential threat at all. I wasn't sure how I felt about either option. Rimi didn't seem to have noticed my discomfort at all, though she sat down on the shelf and was staring at the lyric booklets from the Phantasm CD. I sat down on my computer chair. At last, I could relax. Fear had worn me down today, but I didn't feel as tired as I thought I would, probably because Rimi was here with me.
さて、どうしよっか。
She shut the lyric booklet and gave a big stretch as she smiled at me. What should we do? Don't ask me. Rimi hadn't come to hang out. She hadn't come to borrow a CD either. I was glad she was staying here, but what exactly were we supposed to do? Did we have anything to do? If this was an H game, we'd go straight to an H scene, but... No, I shouldn't be thinking about stuff like that right now. Being alone in my room with a 3D girl was already a tense enough situation. If I started having delusions, I might end up saying something I regretted. Silence. Rimi was sitting there, staring at the manga on the floor and the H games on the bed. This was awkward. I felt like I should say something, but the only things I knew how to talk about were anime and video games. I couldn't imagine Rimi knew much about either of them. It was Rimi who'd offered to stay with me. Maybe she'd say something. If she was hoping for me to take the lead in the conversation, she was asking the wrong person. I really hated dealing with 3D girls. I appreciated her being with me, but this silent pressure was unbearable. Part of the problem was how dark this room was. It made the mood feel kind of erotic. I turned back to my PC, unable to bear the awkwardness anymore. There was something I had to look up. Alright, why don't we stop it there? This is audap. You've been watching Chaos Head Noah running on Nintendo Switch. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching. I will see you at the next stream.